My name is Joel Hirshberg, and I'm the president of Green Building Supply. Today is part A of a two-part series on how to test a new product for chemical sensitivities. Today's discussion will be followed by questions and answers. We encourage you to send in relevant questions during the webinar by clicking the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. At Green Building Supply, we receive phone calls all day long from customers who are very upset. They're frustrated with themselves, and they're frustrated sometimes with their contractors because they applied a product that was off-gassing so badly that they were unable to stay in their own home. Sometimes they had to move out and into a hotel with their kids, and sometimes people even moved into a car. Until the off-gassing completely stopped. This is not an exaggeration. It happens more often than people would like to admit. But why does this happen so often, and how can we prevent it? Our customers tell us that they've read the product reviews, they've even read the material safety data sheets. Their contractor said that he purchased a low or no VOC product, and it had a green label on it. This may have been good information, but something is missing because there's still problems. What was missing? The missing element was their own personal testing of the product. We should never assume that a product is safe for us until we have personally tested it. That's because everybody's different, and we all have different tolerance levels. If we trust the label, or we trust what a salesperson has told us or a contractor has told us, we could easily be misled. That could be very unfortunate, very costly, and very time-consuming. So rule number one, always do your homework, but don't assume a product is good until you have tested it for yourself. Very important. While the labels on the can, the material safety data sheets, and certifications are all good, they only take us part way. They're tools to help us, but the best way to know for sure is to test for your own personal tolerances. And now we're going to learn how to do that, how to test for our own personal sensitivity. Okay, the first thing is to do a clean test of the product. A clean test. What does that mean? This is a test where we test the product by itself in order to give us a baseline or a control. This way we know exactly what the product is without any interference, without any contamination from anything else in the environment. So, how do we do a clean test? Well, the following procedure is very simple. You can do this at home by yourself or with your friends or even with a medical practitioner. This is a test that will test your reaction to any product. Okay, step one. First thing is obtain a fresh or new sample. If it's liquid, make sure it's not been sitting on the shelf for 2 or 3 years. Try to find something new, and you can find out on the back of the can or the bottom of the can there's usually an expiration date. When you open the can, make sure that it doesn't smell really awful or there's something really bad about the product in the first place. If it's solid, like flooring, make sure it's been recently cut from a larger sample. This sometimes is difficult to ensure, but do the best you can to ensure that the sample is fresh or new. Step number 2. For liquids, apply a small amount of product on a piece of tin foil or glass or metal. I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So here's a sample, a small sample that we typically send out. These are little 4-ounce bottles. We're going to open up the top, and we are going to take a little bit out on a piece of tin foil. Okay, everybody has this in their house. Take out a little bit, and what we're going to do is we're going to pour about half of this into the tin foil and spread it out over the surface. Okay, now we're not going to use all of this because we're going to use the other half of this for the second part of the test. Okay, so first we pour out a little bit of paint, and then we spread it out with our paintbrush. Okay. Just spread it out evenly over the surface until it covers as much as you can. Okay? And you can do this with pretty much any liquid product. Okay? So now we've got a piece of tinfoil. And what are we going to do with this tinfoil? We're going to take this and we're going to leave it outside for 24 hours. Okay? That will allow it to dry thoroughly, ideally overnight. Put this in the cleanest environment if possible. Don't put it in a dirty basement or smelly garage. Obviously, humidity and cold temperatures will affect the dry times. If it's really humid, it'll slow down the dry time. Same with coldness. Hot temperatures, dry climates will speed up the drying. But we want to get this to dry out as quickly as possible. Oil-based products, remember, if you're testing an oil-based product, that will also take longer than a water-based product. Just a little reminder here, you can always press the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask some questions as we go along. Okay, step number 4. Let's assume that this is dry. Okay, we then take this and we want to isolate the chemical smell without interference from any other odors. So how do we isolate this sample that is now dry? Okay, we're going to take this and put this in an automobile, on the windshield, on the dashboard, or we're going to put it in a glass jar. Okay. When you're putting it in an automobile, try to use one that's not a brand new one because there's a brand new automobile smell. But if it's an older car, usually you're accustomed to that. You know that it doesn't smell and it won't affect the test. I like using a car because you can often you put in larger samples, especially if you have flooring or if you have, let's say, a kitchen cabinet door you want to put in. You can't fit those very easily in a glass jar, right? So next, once we put this in the jar, and I'll demonstrate this, just simply take this and put this in the jar, like so. We put the lid on, make sure it has a nice tight-fitting lid, and we will then take this jar and put it in the sun. If it's a car, then park your car in a sunny spot so that the sun can come in and heat up the space inside the jar or inside the car. Why do we do that? Because we want the heat to accelerate the off-gassing. We want it to cure it even faster. It's already dry, but there still could be some additional off-gassing. We want to make sure that it is producing that influence so that we can test it when we sit in the car. So 2 or 3 hours of sun or longer. If you don't have any sun in your area, you can always use a heat lamp, or you can use a hair dryer if needed, anything to kind of really heat that up. Okay, you can take the lid off and put a heat lamp in there or a hair dryer. Okay, that's step number 5. Step number 4, sorry. Step number 5, we want to now sit in the car. We want to experience what it's like to be with this sample. Okay? And we want to breathe in whatever is in the car for 3 or 4 minutes. With regard to a glass jar, we take off the lid, and we actually have to put our head inside the jar and breathe it for 3 or 4 minutes. Okay? That's kind of the only way to do it. Then you want to kind of just close your eyes and just be with your body and listen. What is your body telling you? Are you reacting in some way? Are your eyes burning? Is your nose running? Is your heart pounding? Are you getting some itching sensation? Anything in your throat? Or we've had people tell us all kinds of things can happen. Pounding in their ears or they're swelling. Just feel what your body is telling you and listen carefully. So we do this. This step is an important step, and we want to repeat this step because repetition is part of the scientific process. And if you can repeat any part of the experiment, it'll provide a more reliable result. So just one time may not be enough. Even if the result is good, you can do it a second time. If you're getting strong reactions from the first test, then you might want to wait a couple days for it to dry even more thoroughly before you do the second test. Because maybe you were using using an oil-based product or something that just was too, too much liquid, and it maybe required additional dry time. If the reactions continue after this second step, then it's okay to say no to this product. You just simply said, okay, that didn't work for me. I'm going to go find a different product. Okay? Better to find out now rather than purchasing the product and spending thousands of dollars and hoping that it will work later. Okay? So after these two tests, you should have a good idea of just how your body reacts to the product by itself. Okay, the next step is the real test. Okay? What we just did now was a step to determine what the product is like by itself, but that's not the end of the story. We want to see what happens when we actually apply the product to the surface that we're putting it on, like a wall, or like a ceiling, or maybe it's flooring, we're finishing a floor. Whatever we're doing, we actually want to take that same sample, so we're going to take the other 50% of this container, we're going to put it on a brush. I can't do that in front of you, but we're going to take it and we're going to put it on the wall or the ceiling or wherever we want to put it on. Okay? Then we want to see what happens when we apply it. Obviously, if it was some cabinetry or some flooring, piece of flooring, you don't need to do this. There's nothing else to do at this point. You've already tested this product out, and you've already learned whether it's acceptable or not. Okay, so we put on this next step. This important step is to test it out and put it on the wall or the floor, and then wait 24 hours. Okay, then you come back, and you're going to basically, in this case, you have to smell the wall, or you have to smell the floor, or you have to see what it feels like in that space. Because you can't test it, obviously, in your car. You're not going to paint it on your car, and you're not going to, do it inside the jar. Again, you want to do it on the surface to see what happens. Sometimes people call us and tell us that they applied a product, and it was fine the first two steps, but then when they applied it, they started to have a negative reaction. What's going on here? Why am I feeling this way when I know the product was safe in the beginning, I had no reaction. Now I'm putting it on the wall or the floor and it's starting to smell. What could that possibly be? Well, the only real explanation is that there's something already on the surface that you applied it to that it's interacting or reacting with. And that could be creating or emulsifying the surface, opening up the pores and causing that whatever was inside that first initial product, causing it to come out again. Okay? So it's causing off-gassing to start all over again. Why? Because the water in the solution, this is full of water. You put water on anything, it's like putting water on an old piece of stale bread. What happens? It opens up the pores. The same thing is going to happen again. It'll open up the pores, and now something else might come out. Testing it this way will help you avoid problems and know that what's going on now is not the fault of the product because we already tested this out by itself. We know that it's not this because our experience was good so far. So now we have to look at the wall or the floor or the ceiling and determine why is that off-gassing? What can we do about it? You can sand it. You can seal it with other sealers. There may be a lot of other things you have to do. Typically, we ask that people call us and talk to one of our eco-advisors so that we can provide you help in troubleshooting some of these problems. There's so many individual cases that we can't go into them here. But suffice it to say, you're free to call us at any time. So that's the basic sequence and steps for how you test a product. You can do this as often as you like. We recommend you do this on every product because you never really know for sure. And you can't really rely on the labels or the certifications by themselves. So this is part of the process. It's first doing the research, doing the homework, and then doing the testing for every product. And if you're chemically sensitive, you absolutely have to do this. There's no other way around this because you can't rely on what anybody else tells you, even though your best friend may have a great experience with this product, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will react to it in the same way. So that's all I have to say about this process, and now we'll open the floor to some questions. Again, if you have some more questions, click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will start taking questions as they come in.
This comes from Susan. She wants to know how to protect her car from picking up the smells from the test materials. Is there any concern there?
Well, your car has some porous elements to it, the seats, the dashboards, the head, what's it called, the headliner. Yeah, and that may absorb some of the odor from this small test sample. And that's possible. It could, I don't know how to prevent that. The purpose of this, putting in a test of using the car, is that it allows you to get a feeling for your reaction to this product. If it makes the car smell for a little bit, then just air the car out when you're done. That's all I can say. I don't know what else to handle that.
You need a special glass jar for testing. Do you sell them?
No, we just happen to have, this is a bulk jar that we use for bulk nuts and seeds and things, and it's the biggest jar we could find. There is no special jar, just anything that has a good tight-fitting lid. Yeah, this is a big jar. It's pretty big. You can buy these at some of the container stores around. I'm sure that most stores sell big containers like that. Okay, next.
Here's another question. If you experience a smell, does that automatically mean that it's bad for you?
If you experience a smell, sometimes smells are good, sometimes are bad for you, but you can't necessarily equate smell and odor with toxicity. That's why we test, and that's why we read the labels and read the material safety data sheets and look at the third-party certifications. All these together give us an answer for what is really safe or isn't. We can't just rely on the odor, because it can fool you. Sometimes there's no odors, and yet it's such a small amount of toxicity, but it can creep into our life over and over and over a long period of time. So don't rely on just the smell. Look at how you're reacting to it. Your body doesn't lie to you. It's very honest. And listen to your body, and you usually will be guided in the right direction.
This next question comes from Lanny. She wants to know, is there a subfloor product for hardwood floors you would recommend for a chemically sensitive person to test?
A subfloor product meaning like a plywood subfloor, I assume. If it's typical plywood that's used, structural plywoods are typically CDX type plywoods. Tongue and groove plywoods typically have formaldehyde in them, and we sell products that will encapsulate the off-gassing of those. Pardon? Yeah. Safe Seal made by AFM Safe Coat is what we recommend for sealing the off-gassing in all types of porous woods, whether it's plywood or OSB or chipboard or MDF. Very good product. We can talk more about that, but I want to just focus on the testing side of this.
Here's a question from Lori. She says, do you have any recommendations for air quality meters to test for formaldehyde and VOC?
I've been looking into these different types of meters, and there's quite a few of them nowadays that are being on the market. They're not easy to use, and they're expensive to purchase, and it usually takes a professional to really know how to use them properly. What I've learned from these environmental consultants is that when they do testing of the air quality, you end up spending $500 per test sometimes. They only test certain things. They don't always test every possible chemical. It takes a long period of time, and in the end, what you get is a piece of paper that tells you what they experience. They tell you that the air quality has so much chemical, so many milligrams per liter of this and that, but it doesn't necessarily mean you know what is good for you to use. It gives you some indication of whether you should stick around in that place or whether you need to change something. But I still like combining something like that with your actual testing and with your body. If your body's reacting in that room and you're having headaches and you're getting sick in there, that's a pretty good indication there's some problems.
Here's a question.
These are good questions, by the way. Keep them coming.
So this person is using off-the-shelf products. They're not natural, but they don't have any reactions. So is that okay?
You know, when a person says they don't have any reactions, my guess is that they haven't gone through this testing procedure. They've just opened up the can and not had any reactions. That's a good sign, but that doesn't always indicate that that is completely safe for you. Again, I would put it on, do the test, and make sure that you don't have any reactions to it. Also, just because, didn't they say there was no odor? Yeah. Just because there was no odor in it doesn't mean there isn't something toxic. When you read the material safety data sheet, which we're going to talk about in our next lesson, I'll teach you how to do that, then it'll give you a little more insight into what's really going on inside that can of solution.
This next question comes from a longtime customer. Her name is Susan. She wants to know the toughest mitigation you've helped with. What were the issues and how did you tackle?
We deal with so many every day, and there's some real doozies. You know, we one time had a gentleman from the Midwest who called in, and he had just built. He was a builder, and he built a house for his family, and he had just finished the house, and they're ready to move in, and his wife walked in the front door and just about collapsed. Could not even be in there for more than 5 minutes. She was reacting to the carpeting, she was reacting to the paint, she was reacting to some of the flooring and the sealers that were used. Everything was causing problems. So we spent the next 2 months going through every single product in his house, tackling them, sealing them, or removing them and replacing them, whatever was needed. It was a long process of consultation, but we eventually got there. Eventually, when it took about 2 or 3 months, and after that time, the wife was able to move into the house, and the gentleman wrote me back a very nice letter saying that he really thanks me for all the products and told me that he basically saved their marriage. That was the best. Any more questions? Come on now, I know you've got some questions out there. Write them down. Don't be afraid. Just click the Q&A button on your screen and type them in.
Well, this person makes a point. It's not really a question, but maybe you'd like to comment. Everyone is chemically sensitive to one degree or another. We all need to pay attention to the impact of chemicals on our health. Maybe you could speak to long-term exposure.
It's true. We all are sensitive, and some clearly cannot smell anything, and some people, the same product, some people can't even smell for 2 seconds because it causes a reaction. There's a long range of experiences that people have with the same products. And also, these are short-term. Typically, people have a short-term reaction to things, but most chemical sensitivities, in our experience, come from long-term exposure. They come from something that usually didn't bother people in the beginning. It was something very minor that they didn't think was such a big deal. In other words, it didn't kill me, but they put up with it, and they put up with it, and they put up with it year after year after year, and then eventually, after so many years, they started to become extremely sensitive, couldn't tolerate anything, and their life was turned upside down. Other people, the causes of sensitivity are varied, and we can't get into that discussion because it could be from people who have told me that they have Lyme disease. Other people have hereditary issues. It could be people are autistic. Many different types of illnesses are related to chemical sensitivity. It's really hard to pinpoint it. We don't, from our side, we're not doctors here. We've just learned how to source materials that people can tolerate. And we always, even our own products, we still recommend that everybody test them. You still need, you're an individual, you're unique, your tolerance levels could be different from the next person. Even though 1,000 people said it was great, and you read the reviews, still, please, for your own sake, test it yourself.
This next question is from Cindy with Leading Force. She says, how accurate is Declare certification?
The Declare label actually is on this particular can. I don't know if you can see this. It's a special label that we're going to talk more about this in Part B as well. But just a brief, the Declare label is a 100% transparent label for all the ingredients in the product, and it's created by an organization in Washington called the Living Building Institute, excuse me. And they have created this labeling system which allows products to comply with their system, and they have a list of 3,000 chemicals on a red list, they call it, and these are the most toxic chemicals they've ever found, way more than what the government in the U.S. or in Europe has listed. And these chemicals are, you either have them in your product or you don't. And if you don't have them, then you're red list free. And if you do have them, you can still get a Declare label, but you're not red list free. It's a great transparent label. I wish more companies would use it. It tells you every single product that's in there except for some of the proprietary ingredients. And those ingredients they discuss with the people who do the certifications to verify that they're not on that red list. They don't reveal them to you, but the people at the Living Institute confirm that they're not toxic products.
Cindy has another question. She's from Leading Force. She says, what is your recommendation on favorite paint for wallboard?
We like Ecos paints. We also like AFM Safe Coat paints. They cover well, they're non-toxic, they're zero VOC, and we've used them extensively over a couple of decades, so we're very happy with the results that people are telling us. We like hearing from chemically sensitive people. They're our yellow canaries. They tell us what they like. It's great to hear from you always. We're happy to get emails from you about what you like and what you don't like. It really helps us. We've had extremely good success with both AFM and Ecos. Sometimes people want one or the other because they're used to it or because they're trying to encapsulate chemicals underneath them. AFM Safe Coat does a little better job than that. They have a way of encapsulating when you use their primer, their transitional primer, and their paint. Then together those two will encapsulate any VOCs. They don't work on organic odors like pet odors, but they do work on VOCs and encapsulating them. Ecos has their own technique for absorbing odors with their atmosphere purifying paint. They have actually absorbed, it has zeolite in that particular product, and the atmosphere purifying paint. It absorbs the toxins back into the product. A little complicated to get in right here. We can talk again, and again, feel free to email me if you personally have any questions that we're not discussing, not covering today. My email is Joel, Joel, at greenbuildingsupply.com. These are good. Any more?
Yes. Melinda writes that she's about to build a unit in a co-housing community. The developer obviously is buying building materials in bulk. We hired a consultant to make suggestions of non-toxic materials that we would pay extra for. It sounds like you have more experience. How can we be assured that all the materials are non-toxic?
Well, that's a great question. We do our best to go through this process of testing, but the testing that we do is based on our nervous system, okay? It doesn't have anything to do with your nervous system. So to know for sure what's good for you or your clients, if you're doing a big project and you're having to deal with lots of people, then clearly you can't have every single person testing these products one by one. That's why you have to rely a little bit more heavily on your own experience as well as what the MSDS sheets tell you and what third-party certifications tell you about it. Each one of our products has this information on the right-hand margin on our website. There's downloadable PDF files that fully disclose what's in it, how it's been tested, and just lots and lots more details than you could ever want, is what most people tell me. But if you have anything specific about a specific product that's not, you can't find the information, simply call us and we'll be happy to explain it. It's obviously more challenging to do a big project, and it's also important that you choose products that are absolutely as safe as possible, because there's liability issues, and hopefully more landlords and more builders would wake up to the fact that it makes good financial sense to buy the safest and greenest products they can. And unfortunately, right now, it's very confusing out there. You go to a box store and you see green labels everywhere. You see zero VOC everywhere. And the assumption is they're all the same, or that they are totally safe for you, when in fact we all know that that's not the case always. So you can rely on our testing to some extent. We obviously hope that you would do your own testing as best you can. But after 27 years of testing products, and we've tested hundreds and hundreds of products, the ones that we sell now are the ones we feel the most confident in. That doesn't mean there aren't other good products out there. We haven't tested everything, and every few months new products come on the market, and manufacturers keep changing how they're making their products. All we know is that we've tested these for a long, long time, and our chemically sensitive customers have told us over and over again, this is the best they've found. And if you found a better product that you like better than these, please call us, tell us. We'd love to sell it. Okay?
Here's a question from Val. She says, thank you for your help, and she wants to know what you would recommend for attic insulation. She lives in New Jersey. The winters are very cold. And of course, you could test for...
Sure, you can test anything. You can test attic insulation the same way you would test carpeting or flooring or anything else. Obviously, it's not a liquid, but you can certainly put it in a jar and heat it up, put it in your car and heat it in the sun and see what happens, to see how you react to it. Clearly, if it's in an attic, it's going to get really hot, and it will off-gas, and you will smell something. But whether you react to it or not is based on your chemistry, your physiology. We recommend cotton insulation or cellulose insulation. We prefer those and also wool insulation. Those are more natural products, and they're simpler, and they don't have fiberglass. They don't have heavy metals that you find in some of these new products. There's a lot of products in the polyurethanes that might be in the foam. There are situations for using all these products. They all have their proper application, but you have to know how to use them, when to use them, and I can't just paint a broad brushstroke and say this one product is best for every application. I know what we've used, and we've had good experiences with cotton and cellulose.
This next question is from Anonymous. He wants to know about mortar and whether it should be tested. He says we're having a chimney liner installed, and they have to seal the chimney hole and want to use a refractory mortar. I insist on testing it, correct? Do you have any recommendations for mortar for NCSers?
Mortar is, any cementitious product has similar chemicals in them, whether it's concrete block or poured cement or something that comes in a small bag as a finishing compound or a self-leveling compound or mortar for bricks or block. All of these cementitious type products have some common properties to them. They're basically lime and cement and sand, and then there's some other chemicals that might be in there. They may have added antimicrobials. They may have added some biocides or fungicides that you're not aware of. And these are not required to be listed on a material safety data sheet. So it's hard to know without testing. That's why testing on your own is always recommended. The big problem with most cementitious products are the crystalline silicates. And crystalline silicates, we get this question every day about, thin set under tile or grout. same thing, or even drywall. Crystalline silicates in all of these products are an occupational hazard. That means that they're a problem when they become airborne for someone who is using them day in and day out. It's a respiratory thing that's created when you breathe these in, and most consumers are not in the vicinity of this when it's being applied. The minute you add water to it, for example, it becomes solid. It's no longer airborne, no longer a respiratory problem, therefore not really an issue. There's no off-gassing of these kind of products, but if there's something else in it that they didn't tell you about, which is possible, then you have to do some homework, do some digging, ask the manufacturer to give you as many details as you can, and do what I do. I hammer on the technical support team at these companies, beg them to give me the information. It's hard to get it, and they often won't tell you. So sometimes you have to just go with your gut and go with your direct experience.
This next question comes from Lisa. She has a house that's 30 years old. She says, I'm having all of the first floor carpets replaced with hardwood floors. Do I need to worry about the chipboard below the carpets off-gassing when the carpets are pulled up, or do they already have it out-gassed at this point?
Don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. Some people tell me that when they remove the carpeting, they experience it starts smelling all over again. It didn't smell when they moved in. They take the carpet out, and oh my gosh, it smells horrible. What's going on? AFM Safe Coat Safe Seal will seal that. You could also take a piece of 6 mil polyethylene plastic and cover the whole surface to see if that's what the problem is. If that's what's creating the problem. That's an easy and inexpensive way to test that. But it's very common that even old plywood, even old OSB or chipboard can start re-off-gassing, if that's a word. Once you remove the carpet or the hardwood flooring that's on the surface. So, yeah, test it. It's kind of hard to rip a piece out and test it, so that may not be possible. You may have to just smell it on the floor, get your nose down there and see what kind of reaction you have. Chances are that there's still some formaldehyde in it, and it's an inexpensive insurance policy to just buy a couple of gallons, seal it, and then forget about it. Then you don't have to think, is it or will it cause any problems down the road? Nowadays, they're starting to make plywoods that are better, but still, it's still a challenge for most states. Even in California, it's challenging to get it. Finding a good structural plywood for sheathing or wall subflooring is still very, very difficult to find. Marine grade plywood is one example. If you live on the coast, sometimes they're available. They're not cheap at all, but they do claim that their products are non-toxic. Good question.
This next question is from B, who's wondering about the best choice for low VOC flooring.
Okay. Kind of getting off topic here. Yeah, I think we're going to have to pass on that one. There's just too many questions I have to ask about where it's going and who's living there and what's best for you. But for sure, give us a call. Our eco-advisors are here today. We'll be happy to answer your questions and go over that in great detail. We also have a learning center on our website where we talk about a lot of these products and get into great detail about what's in them, how they're made, and how they may affect you. So good. Any more?
How would you test TSP for washing pesticide off walls and cabinets and so forth? This is from Susan.
Yeah. Well, TSP, trisodium phosphate, is a cleaner that's been around a long time that people use to wash their walls. And, some people may react to it. You're going to have to come up with your own testing method for something like a cleaner like that. But you certainly could take it, put it on a piece of, tin foil or metal or something that's inert, and just test that by itself before you put it on the surface that you're trying to clean and see what happens. I don't see any reason why you couldn't do that, just like you would paint.
This next question is general from Anonymous. They write, what's the best approach for testing and creating an entire space that my family and guests are comfortable in?
So that's a big question. Say that again?
How would you go about creating a whole space that's safe and comfortable?
Yeah, you know, it's a huge research project, and clearly you have to, the first step is in knowing yourself, knowing what your family's limits are, how sensitive they are to different products. You can certainly test these products with each individual in your family, which is a lot of work. Granted, there's no other way to really do it other than doing a lot of homework online and researching what people are saying. Having an architect who's familiar with green building is helpful, but typically architects or even builders don't necessarily know all these products, nor will they know how you react to them. So the more you know about yourself and what's good for you, the more you've done ahead of time, the easier it will be for you to say, yes, I can live with that. Yes, that will work for me. But if you don't know, then you're kind of at their, whatever they say, you're going to have to say, well, I guess that's what everybody's doing, so that's what we will do. That doesn't always work for chemically sensitive people. And you don't want to find out later that you've just built a home and spent millions, thousands of dollars, and you can't live in it either. This has happened many, many times, even to our chemically sensitive customers who don't test every single product. The contractor says he's going to buy a safe product, and he goes to the local store and buys what he thinks is safe. That gets you part of the way, but it may not get you all the way. And so it slows down the process when you have to do this testing. It makes there's no question. It's just not simple, but it is a safer way for you to move forward. You can certainly call us at any point, and we could have a long discussion. You can come to our showroom and see all of our products. We've got a beautiful 7,000 square foot showroom with lots of things. Spend the day here, and we can discuss many, many different products. Because ultimately, it comes down to the products that you're living with. The design of the house, the energy efficiency of the house is great, but ultimately you're living and breathing in a space that needs to be as safe as possible. And feel free to call us or come by. We'll talk.
This next question is again from Dee, who wants to know about air cleaners, and whether you have a favorite air cleaner.
We sell a product called IQ Air, which is one of the best air purifiers on the market. I have not tested all the other air purifiers out there. Most air purifiers do something. They do a good job, but it really depends upon what you're trying to clean and how bad is it. If you're trying to clean inside of an HVAC duct, they don't do all that well. If you're trying to clean mold and mildew in your attic or in your crawl space, they don't do that well either. If it's just general all-purpose cleaning of the air, just to have nice fresh air, they do a pretty decent job, and all of them do a good job. Some are a little better than others, and they all make claims about how good they are, but truthfully, most people should have these just because there's a lot of bad air circulating around. There's pollen, there's dust, there's other chemicals, especially in big cities. So, yeah, I don't really have any strong favorites in that regard.
She has another question. What's your favorite subfloor under tile?
Tile requires a very solid, stable subfloor. Traditionally, companies have used Durarock or any kind of a cement board. Hardwood is one. We also carry a product called Schluter, which is a membrane, a non-toxic membrane that replaces the need for cement board, and they're great. And they also provide decoupling as well as water infiltration. So Schluter, S-H-L-U-T-E-R, would be one of the best brands for it. Most tile installers are familiar with that. You can get that pretty much anywhere. We sell it here as well. And they have a lot of products for the flooring as well as for the walls.
The next question is from Anonymous, who wants to know if something has stopped smelling, does that mean it's no longer off-gassing?
Well, clearly some of the off-gassing has stopped. Whether it continues or not depends a lot on the airflow in the room. So something can seem like it doesn't smell. We've all had the experience that everything seems to be fine until it rains outside. And then all of a sudden, wow, all of a sudden we can smell everything again. How is that? It's the humidity that kind of draws it out. So just because the smell seemed to go away doesn't mean that the off-gassing has stopped. Another good example is if you live in an older home, try sticking your head in one of the cabinets. Open up the door and just peek, put your head in there. Many times, and I've had this experience myself, you can smell formaldehyde in the cabinets after 20, 30 years. Why hasn't it off-gassed after that long? Probably because there's not much airflow and the conditions in the home don't allow for that to off-gas quickly. So it could be a very damp environment. They live in part of the country where it's very damp, or there's just not enough heat to accelerate that off-gassing.
Here's a question from Lanny, who wants to know what brands of pre-finished hardwood flooring would you recommend for a chemically sensitive person to test? Or would you recommend putting in the floor and then finishing it yourself?
Yeah, I'll answer that last part because the first part you should call us for again. Pre-finishing a floor versus buying a floor yourself. Most pre-finished floors are already off-gassed. They usually are UV cured in the factory, so there's very little, if any, off-gassing. There might be some, but very little compared to what you'll get when you do it in your own home. The process of refinishing a floor is quite a jarring, disruptive process. Sanding causes lots of dust, just like drywall dust. It gets everywhere. And even though they now make equipment that will eliminate a lot of this dust, it still gets in everything. And it stays in the air for quite a long time. It's very hard to remove all that. It could be weeks and months before you really get all the dust out of the air. So that's a big thing. It's also disruptive because you can't move into a room for several weeks, usually, especially if it's a large house. You can't go in and start using that floor for quite a while until it finally cures. Also, most of the water-based products that are used by contractors these days still have a lot of bad chemicals in them that are not good for people. They may be low VOC, they may even be zero VOC, although there's not many of those. The low VOC products still have things like acetone or ammonia or other solvents that people react to. Contractors often cannot smell very well, and so they may say it's fine for them, but you need to test this out yourself. And if it passes your test and you're fine with it, go with it. But our experience has been that most people are not too happy with the results because of that from a health standpoint. There's a lot of other reasons why we would recommend a pre-finished hardwood floor that is installed. It's a lot faster. There's a lot of other eco-benefits to it, and we can discuss that at a later point, or you can call in, or you can read on our website, because we do talk a lot about that.
Several people are indicating their gratitude for this session, and one person specifically wants to know when's the next session and what's it going to be about. Okay, the next session is going to be in 3 to 4 weeks. It's going to be about how to read a material safety data sheet, or a safety data sheet as they're now called. They're very intricate, they're very detailed. It's a lot of technical chemistry kind of issues that have to be discussed. So we will email everyone about that. It'll also be posted on our website when this will be, so you'll be notified. And of course, if you miss it, we will also post the webinar on our website so you can see it at a later time. But thanks for asking. We plan on doing many more of these. Questions are great. It really helps bring it out, and hopefully it's helped you in some way too. Anonymous here wants to know what your criteria is when you select products to stock here at Green Building.
Safety is clearly the #1 criteria, and how we judge that depends on our experience with it. We do just what we talked about today. We do this kind of testing, but we also do performance testing. We didn't talk anything about that because that was not the subject of today's talk. But performance testing is a whole different category that requires usually a year of our testing to make sure that it holds up, especially if it's an outdoor product. How well does it handle the sun and the rain and the snow and the ice? Here in Iowa is a pretty good place to test. And we just learned that testing things for a long period of time gives us a better indication of how well it's going to hold up. From a safety standpoint, we have people here who test products with us who are chemically sensitive, and that gives us some indication. But also the criteria is based on my research with the companies, calling and talking to the tech departments, digging deep into what they normally don't tell people, because I know what kind of questions they ask, and sometimes they'll tell me if they know that we're going to consider selling their product, they can get it out of them. Once we vet them for their products and test them, then we put it on the market and sell it. And so far we've been very fortunate. We've not had to cancel very many products except in the very beginning days, where we had a couple of bamboo flooring companies that lied to us and told us that their products were safe, and it turns out they really weren't. But that was in the early days, and we didn't have the same technical abilities or the information that we now have available on the web.
Have you developed any of your own products?
We have a few that we private label, and one that we've developed, it's called Blissfully Clean. That is a completely non-toxic product using clay from France, and it's got clay and soap, and that's it. Just 2 ingredients, or a 3rd ingredient if you want the organic mint or the organic lemon flavors, but otherwise it's unscented. So that's the only one. We're always looking for something else. We also private label a sealer, a concrete penetrating sealer that we love very much. That's fantastic for concrete surfaces such as basements or walkways or bricks or blocks or pretty much any cementitious product like stucco too.
The next question is general. Why would sometimes a product bother me, and why would sometimes it be just fine?
That's a simple question, but it's actually pretty deep. You know, people change every day. Your body is different. How you feel when you wake up in the morning is different sometimes, depending on how much rest you got. What you ate the night before could make a difference. What's in your environment? You know, it could be that the day before there was a fire down the block, or there was a lot of pollen in the air. So many environmental things could be impacting your physiology at any given point. It's very hard to say why that would happen. But it does happen, and a lot of people experience that. So that's why testing things a couple times is a good idea, because that way you can experience it on one day and then try it again maybe a week later and see if you get the same results. And if you do, that's great, and if you don't, then maybe try it a 3rd time. But clearly, get in the habit of testing. It's something that we as Americans don't really do, or frankly any national. Nobody really does this. You shouldn't have to. Truthfully, no one should have to do any testing. The product should be guaranteed safe by the manufacturer. That, unfortunately, is not happening at this current time, and hopefully it will happen at some point in the future. And I think one of the great things about your participation in this is when you ask manufacturers what's in their product and how is it made and what are all the chemicals, and when you insist on safer and safer products, you send a message to them. And the more people that do that, the more likely we are that they're going to change and start doing it. But if nobody asks and nobody complains, they're going to assume that what they're doing is okay. They want to keep their market share. They don't want to change it. So the more you can do from a consumer standpoint really does make a difference. So Again, thank you for these questions. I think it's been a great session. I appreciate all of the fact that you've come here. Feel free to call us if you have any further questions. Our direct number is 1-800-405-0222. It's Joel Hirshberg, Green Building Supply, signing off. Have a great day.